All right, all right, all right. This is You Can't Make This Shit Up.
You really can't.
You can't. Your host, Angelia Rahman and David Washington of the J in Washington Network. All right. What do we have today?
All right. So we have a very viral story today. So a woman named Brittany Watts facing charges for abuse of a corpse after a quote unquote miscarriage highlights the issue of reproductive rights. A 33-year-old medical receptionist, Watts miscarried at home under complex circumstances. Ohio's unclear abortion laws left her feeling without untimely medical intervention, resulting in the miscarriage, right? The resulting of her fetal remains led to legal troubles with racial and socio-economical factors possibly influencing the intense scrutiny and persecution. Legal experts see this case as a potential shift towards recognizing fetal personhood in law, a long-term goal of anti-abortion movements, possibly affecting the future of miscarriage and abortion cases. This case unfolds as voters increasingly support reproductive rights, showcasing a disconnect between public and legal actions. Let's go.
Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm going to come at this from the point of view of the sanctity of privacy. However, I want to hear your point of view on this particular story. There has been an update since we first thought about this as a topic. Charges, a grand jury decided not to bring charges against Ms. Watts, so this is done. However, it does bring up concerns, legal concerns for many people many women who may find themselves in this situation. But let's hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for that, David. So I just wanted to quickly highlight the fact that this story does present itself as Brittany Watts is being charged for having a miscarriage, which in fact she did not have a miscarriage. She gave birth, sadly, to a stillborn, which is completely different. But in fact, she is being charged with abuse of a corpse, right?
That's correct.
So as the law states in Ohio, no person except as authorized by the law shall treat a human corpse in such a way that the person would outrage responsible family sensibilities. So it's sort of different in Florida from what I have seen with this law in particular. From what I've seen, it seems as if in Florida, just don't make love to the dead corpse, for lack of a better term. But in this case, it seems like she's not being charged for actually having the death of this child. It's mostly because she plunged this child down the toilet, right? So from what I have seen, it seems like the baby would have been around a pound, but it is important to still note that either way, with or without her flushing down the baby down the toilet, the baby would not have survived either way.
Correct. And my approach to this, again, is the right to privacy of the individual, which is being debated here in Florida. Currently, the governor's 15-week ban and subsequent 16-week ban on abortion is an issue in front of the Florida Supreme Court, and they're weighing whether individuals have a right to the privacy of the individual versus the right to privacy of information. And this, and thank goodness, the Ohio grand jury failed to indict Ms. Watts on this issue.
Yes.
Because it's adding insult to injury. She went to the hospital complaining of pain and bleeding.
Yes.
It showed in her medical records that the doctors deemed that her pregnancy was not viable. Mm-hmm. They said that if they didn't induce labor, Watts was at a significant risk of death, but they weren't sure they could act because of these gray areas.
Right.
Along with the medical issues. And they debated this. And Ms. Watts, I ain't got time for this shit.
Exactly.
I'm not feeling well. I'm not getting the medical care that I need because we're debating all these legal issues. And subsequently, she had the miscarriage, the stillborn, and she went back to the hospital to address what happened. And someone at the hospital, at the clinic, called it into the police, and the police went in and consulted with the state's attorney, and they actually took the toilet out. They out of the floor and examined the sewer line to determine if a crime was committed.
Exactly.
And then common sense would just tell you, which.
But based off of that, now, I mean, I'm not saying that she actually did anything wrong. I do believe that, she actually did give, I don't want to say give birth because it is a stillborn, that the baby is a stillborn. But in this case, I do believe that they were digging the plumbing up because of the fact that it did clog the toilet.
Okay, my understanding that at one point it was clogged, but it was resolved.
Yes.
But I may be wrong. However,
because the baby was around a pound, so you're thinking about a pound being flushed down the toilet.
Right.
I mean, I'm not a plumber by any means, but just thinking about that, there's no way that would not have caused any issues.
It just strikes me as odd to even consider this as a felony by the state's attorney's office.
Right.
And I'm taking this issue with the state's attorney's office. We're talking about potentially a year in prison for Ms. Watts.
Exactly.
A $2,500 fine. And a charge of abuse of a corpse. When in the investigation, all they need to do was call the medical office,
Absolutely.
her doctors, secure the records before even taking this to a grand jury.
Exactly.
And that drives me freaking crazy. Just some common sense things that they should have done without coming into this woman's life and literally tearing it apart.
Exactly. Literally terrorizing her. I mean, can you imagine, and this is the most important part, is that this young woman went through a very traumatic event.
Correct.
I mean, she gave birth to a stillborn. I mean, I can't imagine, of course, I've never been in that situation, being in that situation and just not knowing what to do. I mean, it is very easy to criticize her for her actions and saying, well, that is immoral and all that stuff. Well, what would you do if you gave birth to a stillborn child? I don't know what I would do. I can't say that I wouldn't do the same in a way because you panic. Oh, my goodness. And then, she happened to flush this baby down. Of course, it sounds awful whenever you say it out loud, but in the moment, I mean, your adrenaline is high. Of course, you're gonna do something like that, right? Something that doesn't make sense. I think what's really important to really note over here is what was going on at the hospital. Especially since she went there and she was bleeding. She had heavy blood clots. And so what did the hospital do, or what did the hospital not do that would not that did not help this baby? Because it seemed like, I mean, I'm not sure, of course, maybe there was a chance of survival for this baby, but the hospital did not do their part.
She waited.
Exactly. And that is another important issue that I think that we need to discuss, especially as conservatives and as liberals. Conservatives are thinking that we can just slap an abortion bill on every single thing, but that's not the case. I mean, our culture is not at that place yet of where we can ban abortions. Instead, we need to take care of the internal issues, such as the adoption process. I mean, you look at this case in particular, you see that there is obviously something wrong with Ohio's medical team and that there's something wrong with their prenatal care.
I think with the laws regarding women's health care and their right to their health care and decision making in their health care, we're finding lawyers and grand juries and judges making those decisions instead of the patient, her family, and her doctor. And it's unfortunate that Miss Watts and who knows how many other women in this similar situation go to the hospital seeking care.
Right, exactly.
And waiting while this debate goes on and not finding the solution or the results that they need to get the health care that they need. This is a personal matter, and I go back to the issue of the privacy of the individual. This is something that shouldn't be left to a grand jury or to a state's attorney to make a decision to interrupt the person's life.
Absolutely.
To, take out the toilet in their bathroom, to determine if there was an abuse of a corpse. For goodness sakes, call the doctor's office, get the medical records.
Exactly.
And I don't think this is going to be the end of a story like this. And to have, again, institutions that really have no business involved in a decision like this, making decisions to threaten, the prosecution. Where is America going? And this is a sad circumstance.
Exactly.
I'm glad the grand jury did not bring back charges against Ms. Watts.
Absolutely.
They did not indict her. So kudos to the Ohio grand jury who heard this case.
And David, you make a really good point in that, and that reminds me, you think about the fact that Miss Watts clearly was not trying to have an abortion. Of course, abortion is outlawed in Ohio, but it was so clear that she was not intending on having an abortion for this baby. And so the fact that we are penalizing her for an unfortunate situation, an unfortunate tragedy that happened.
Right.
One thing that I would like to bring up is the fact that I feel that we don't talk about the fact that abortions, miscarriages, stillborns, these are tragic events that unfortunately they're very scarring on the woman's life.
Yes.
And one thing that I found really interesting as far as some of the outtakes or the outlooks on this situation in particular is that the left, was actually admitting the fact that this is a very, very tragic situation and it's very scarring for the woman. So would it then not be scarring to have an abortion as well?
That's and that's hard for me to answer. That's from the perspective of the woman. Do I know women in my life that have had abortions and their reactions, depending on that particular individual, have been different from the other, and traumatic to some extent, and not traumatic to another extent.
Absolutely.
So I believe as you go individual to individual, you'll get a different reaction because of the circumstances. That's a question that I cannot answer. Would it be traumatic if I was in that position? To some extent, yes.
Okay. I like that. So what is your final thought on this issue?
My final thought, again, I'm taking the perspective of the right to privacy of the individual. There was no reason why the police should have gotten involved. Ms. Watts reacted naturally to what had happened, because is there any right way to react to what occurred? There really isn't. Everyone's going to react differently. She had been to the hospital 4 times that week. 4 times that week.
Exactly.
And still, there was no resolution at the hospital. When she returned to the hospital, she was asked by a nurse what had happened and what she had did with the fetal remains. And the nurse reported the information to law enforcement. And the rest is history. I don't know why the nurse needed to report that to law enforcement, because Ms. Watts was there at the hospital 4 times. She came back to make sure that everything's okay.
Exactly.
And so it hurts my heart to see what had happened. I don't think any prosecutor or law enforcement officer had any business involved in this. Again, it boils down to the decision between the individual and their doctor. That's where I stand.
And my final thought is, like you were saying, is that this case is very heartbreaking. Any case that involves a child losing their life is heartbreaking. No matter the cause, no matter what side of the aisle you are on, you have to acknowledge the fact that this is a tragic either way. I also want to urge pro-life legislators to create laws that actually promote life, such as fixing our broken adoption system and providing better quality and more affordable health care. Creating these extreme abortion laws only bans more chaos, not solutions.
Good call. I like that.
Thank you.
Very good. Hey, let us know what you
Yes.
think. Please bring your facts, not your feelings. That's right.
I learned from him.
Let us know. Comment. Be respectful. Let us know what you think about today's episode, your position on what we said. If you're in agreement or disagreement with Angelina or myself, please let us know. Let's have that conversation.
Exactly.
That's what our community is about.
Absolutely.
Honest communication, honest conversation amongst ourselves. Please visit us where?
At jnw.com.
Excellent. We're all over the major socials. Hey, we're boosting our Instagram presence.
Woohoo!
Thank you, Angelina.
Check out our reels.
Yes, yes. I've broken down and I have succumbed to Instagram. Angelina is helping lead that effort. So please check us out on Instagram. Also,
Pretty soon we might even be on TikTok.
look out. I don't know if I'll be able to do TikTok. I'm having a hard time just being in front of the camera and just talking to the camera, but we're doing it. But however, please check us out. Check out our blog on our website.
Yes, the Informer.
The newsletter, The Informer. We have to give the blog a name, something fancy.
Yes, let us know in the comments.
Yes, please.
Free labor.
There you go. True capitalist.
There you go.
All
We're
right.
liberal. There
All
you
right.
go.
There you go. I'm not the liberal that people think I am.
Exactly.
But please like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification
Ring that
button.
notification bell.
There you go.
I don't want to miss another episode, do you?
I sure don't. We are the Jay and Washington Network. We'll see you the next time.
See ya.